Okay, here's toss-up 1. One of these constructs named for Banach and Mazur can be used to define bare spaces. Seymour and Thomas showed that one of these constructs can be used to bound the tree width of a graph by at least one less than the cop number. Differential forms of this construct include ones named for pursuit and evasion. The Sprague-Grundy theorem states that the impartial examples of these constructs are equivalent to Nimbers. John von Neumann applied the minimax theorem to the payout matrices in zero-sum types of these constructs in a process that locates Nash equilibrium.
Games?
Yes.
Wow.
And your bonus. At one point, this character suddenly realizes that a rock on an island is identical to a tooth in his mouth. For 10 points each, name this character a naval lieutenant. At the end of the novel he appears in, it is revealed he didn't even have time to kick off his sea boots before his death. Answer: Pincher Martin. The author of Pincher Martin, William Golding, also wrote this novel about boys turning savage after being stranded on an island.
Lord of the Flies.
At the beginning of Lord of the Flies, the boys decide that whoever is holding this object should have the power to speak to the group. It is shattered during the death of Piggy.
Conk.
Yes, 20. Toss-up 2. A leader of this organization feuded with Alastair Darling over the causes of the failure of the Northern Rock Company. When this organization was tasked with buying massive quantities of its signature product from the open markets, it failed to maintain a necessary price threshold because of the dumping from the Quantum Fund. This organization abandoned its ERM policy in 1992. From 2003 to 2013, its leader was Mervyn King, a man whose successor had once led a similar organization in Canada. George Soros is nicknamed the man who broke this organization.
Like Bank of England?
Yes. Bonus. In the 1930s, many American playwrights turned to history and politics for inspiration. Answer the following about this trend for 10 points each. The 1939 Pulitzer was awarded to Robert Sherwood for a play about this man, including his youthful romance with Anne Rutledge. George Saunders' recently published novel is titled For This Man in the Bardo.
Lincoln.
This playwright teamed with Kurt Weill on an allegorical musical about the New Deal set in New Amsterdam titled Knickerbocker Song. He would collaborate again with Weill on the musical Lost in the Stars. Maxwell Anderson. Anderson's play What Price Glory is set during this war. Anderson worked on the script for the film adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front, which was also set during this war.
World War I.
20. Toss-up 3. After a writer was banned in his country, a fellow poet wrote the lines, "Only the trees know the pain as they stand still erect, their branches dry like wire." The protagonist of a novel set in his country loses his glasses while trying to convince his mother to sell their ancestral farm. Another novel set in this country ends with its protagonist working with Bev Shaw to euthanize dogs. An author from this country wrote Rumors of Rain and a novel in which Ben Dutoit searches for information about a janitor's missing son, A Dry White Season. Andre Brink hails from this country.
South Africa.
Yes. Bonus. NPHR is used in a form of this technique that hyperpolarizes excitable cells with yellow light pulses. For 10 points each, name this technique that typically uses blue light to activate transgenic channel rhodopsin 2 under a cell-specific promoter, allowing temporarily precise neuromodulation.
Think of something.
Answer:
UV spectroscopy.
optogenetics. CHR2 was first isolated from the Chlamydomonas genus of this colorful paraphyletic clade that includes charophytes and chlorophytes like sea lettuce and volvox.
It's like the volvox is a type of Hirtus, isn't it now?
Is this like
Answer:
defer.
Plankton.
green algae. NPHR, or halorhodopsin, is found in a class of salt-loving extremophiles from these prokaryotes that comprise a third domain distinct from eukaryotes and bacteria.
Archaea.
10.
I knew it was called green algae. I should have read that.
Toss-up 4. During the rule of a king of this name, Matthew Bonelist led a revolt in Palermo, during which he assassinated the incredibly powerful Admiral Mayo. Another king of this name married his aunt Constance to the future Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, and made her his heir, leading to Hohenstaufen rule in Sicily. Those kings of Sicily with this name were known as the Bad and the Good. With the help of Henry I, a ruler of this name defeated rebels at Val-et-Dune. At the 1049
Charles?
No. Council of Reims, a ruler of this name was forbidden from marrying Matilda of Flanders. A king of this name put down revolts during the harrying of the north and also compiled the Domesday Book. For 10 points, give this name of the man who became King of England after his victory at the Battle of Hastings.
William.
Yeah. Bonus. This phrase appears at the end of an inscription an artist added to his portrait of his wife Margaret. For 10 points each, give this three-word phrase often written in Greek letters that is also carved into the frame above a portrait of a man in a red turban. Its middle word forms a pun with the artist's name.
Venix motto, so what is it?
What is that? I don't know.
Answer.
Alpha and Omega.
As I can, or als ik kan. The phrase as I can was used by this 15th century Flemish artist to sign his Ghent altarpiece, which he completed with his brother Hubert.
And I.
In the Arnolfini wedding, the signature Jan van Eyck was here was placed above this object, which is surrounded by 10 medallions depicting the Passion of Christ. According to the art historian Erwin Panofsky, this object's presence indicates the legality of marriage.
The mirror, right?
Yeah, the mirror.
Yes, 20.
My bad, guys. It's alright, that's fine. I'm just about the first part, I guess.
Toss up 5. This composer's father's battle with Alzheimer's inspired his piece for clarinet and chamber orchestra that includes a mooing cow. This composer included the movement Meister Eckhart in Quacky in a piece. Yes.
Nice
Bonus. Who said conspiracy theories are a modern concept? Answer the following about conspiracy theories of the 1940s. As early as 1944, men like John T. Flynn were arguing that the U.S. government had advanced knowledge of the Japanese assault on this Hawaiian base. While the theory did not really take off until the 1960s and beyond, several theorists claimed that this person and partner Fred Noonan were either executed by the Japanese or forced to work for them, perhaps as one of the people using the name Tokyo Rose.
It was the name of Tokyo Rose.
Answer. Amelia Earhart. In this 1943 experiment, the U.S. Navy supposedly managed to temporarily turn the escort ship Eldridge invisible to enemy devices. The Navy denies this experiment ever took place.
What? The USS St. Louis?
Answer. The Philadelphia
Yeah, the
experiment.
Philadelphia experiment.
10 on that bonus. Toss up 6. Jon Steingrimsson gave a sermon at the outskirts of one of these events in 1783. As a result of these events, so-called castles were created in a region known as Dimmuborgir. Locals describe these events using a word that means the hardship of the mist. One of these events threatened the harbor of Heimaey, leading it to a massive 4-month campaign that transported over 1 billion gallons of water. Over time, many of these events created Surtsey, and these events earned Hekla the nickname Gateway to Hell. Flights in Europe were disrupted for...
Like a volcano eruption?
Yes.
Borders of black metal.
Bonus. On one occasion, this man told his wife Merope to not to bury him, and then escaped the underworld by convincing Hades to let him go and scold her for it. For 10 points each, name this terminally clever founder of Ephyra, which was later called Corinth, who now spends his time rolling a boulder that always escapes his grasp up the hill in the underworld. On another occasion, Sisyphus chained up this god when this son of Nyx and brother of Hypnos came to fetch him by asking to see how the chains of this personification carried worked. In an unrelated case of messing with death, Apollo did this action on behalf of Admetos, giving the latter his infamous ability to avoid death if somebody else died for him. Description acceptable.
Wait, didn't he get someone to die in his place?
Those were Cyclops. So he killed a Cyclops?
I have Apollo got the fates drunk. So
that's
20
that's
points.
also- He also did that.
You want to protest?
No, it's the wrong one. Oh my bad.
Toss up 7. Legendarily, this product was introduced into the Americas when Captain John Thurber gave a sample to Dr. Henry Woodward while finding refuge from a storm. It has nothing to do with railroads, but James Gadsden of Gadsden Purchase fame earned his fortune producing this product. Jonathan Lucas is claimed by many to be the Eli Whitney of this product, which was challenged in popularity in a certain colony after the introduction of indigo. A strain of
Tobacco?
No. A strain of this crop from Africa became known as Carolina Gold. By 1856, this product was a $1 million crop in California, fueled by the large Chinese immigrant population. For 10 points, what cash crop required massive levels of irrigation and was a key part of the colonial economies of South Carolina and Georgia?
Rice.
Yes.
Yeah. Too bad, Carolina.
Bonus. Answer the following about when art kills, for 10 points each. During an installation of an Alexander Calder piece at Princeton, a snapped cable resulted in the death of 2 workmen. Calder originated this type of sculpture whose shapes move in response to touch or air currents. This artist and his wife once took 7 years to set up thousands of yellow umbrellas in California and blue umbrellas in Japan as part of an art project. High winds blew an umbrella in California loose, killing a bystander. A piece by this sculptor, noted for working with large-scale assemblies of sheet metal, had a part break free from its support and kill a rigger in Minneapolis. He installed tilted an arc of rusted steel in New York City's Federal Plaza.
Sarah.
Yes,
Nice,
that's 30.
nice.
30 points.
What toss-up is this?
This will be 8. A character in this play remembers a time when his son hit him in the face before exclaiming, "Rotten kid, I hate tough kids, you work your heart out." Another character in this play times himself walking 40 feet while mimicking an old man hobbling with a cane, determining that it actually... Yes.
Nice buzz,
yeah.
nice buzz, man.
That wasn't a mistake.
In one role, this woman is observed by a hijab-wearing photographer as she emerges from a crowd of people who, holding signs reading, "Join the conversation." For 10 points each, name this actress who, in an April 2017 work, played a woman who peacefully confronted a police officer and then led a crowd as captions reading, "Live bolder, live live louder, live for now," flashed onto the screen.
Oh, is this like Kim Kardashian?
Oh, no, it's,
Answer?
Jenner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gender starred in an idiotic advertisement referencing social justice movements produced by this soft drink company.
Pepsi.
Okay.
Pepsi.
The ad's depiction of a woman offering Pepsi to the cheerful police was contrasted with a 2016 photograph taken in this city showing a woman standing in the street about to be arrested by police in riot gear.
It's Ferguson.
Are you sure?
I think so.
Ferguson?
Baton Rouge.
That's a different
20.
that's a different-
That was mine.
That was good point.
Yeah.
9. After seeing a performance in the city, a critic blasted a man's filthy and bestial movements such as miming masturbation using a nymph's scarf. At another premiere in this city, a crowd shouted, "Somebody get her a dentist," at a woman with an odd posture. That performance also began with a then unfamiliar bassoon solo.
Paris.
Yes.
Why is that so early?
Bonus. People in this city are told about faith, hope, and love, with the greatest of these being love. For 10 points each, what city is the addressee of a letter whose 13th chapter famously declares that love never fails? That passage, commonly read at weddings, also lists such attributes as love as being kind and not envying.
It's spelled Corinth. I think so. Okay. Corinth?
Yes. 1 Corinthians, like numerous other New Testament epistles, was written by this man who converted after being blinded on the road to Damascus.
Paul.
In several epistles, including 1 Corinthians, Paul praises Aquila, a tent maker, and this woman, his wife. Both were of great assistance to Paul during the early days of the Christian church.
Priscilla.
What?
Priscilla.
Priscilla.
Priscilla. Oh.
Yeah. 20 points.
Keep adding more toss-ups.
And toss-up 10. An author from this country wrote a play whose notorious nicky-nacky scene depicts a politician pretending to be a bull, a toad, and a dog while being whipped by the courtesan Aquilina. A play written in this country features an Act 4 proviso scene in which two lovers use legal terms to negotiate the conditions of their marriage. In a bawdy play written in this country, a man deliberately spreads the false rumor that he is impotent so that he can seduce the wives of unsuspecting husbands. 17th century authors in this country wrote Venice Preserved and comedies like The Way of the World and...
UK.
Sure, yeah.
Wait, I want to purchase that.
Okay. I will mark
it.
it.
It wasn't a country.
Okay, that sounds good.
Here's your bonus. This character resigns himself to the Tower Society in a novel about his time in a theater group where he plays the lead character in Hamlet. For 10 points each, name this character from German literature who romances old Barbara's mistress, Marianne, in a novel about his apprenticeship, which is followed by a novel about his journeyman years.
Meister.
Prompt.
Wilhelm.
Yes. Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship was written by this German novelist who wrote a more famous novel about young love, The Sorrows of Young Werther.
Goethe. Goethe.
Yes, another literary apprenticeship is that of Duddy Kravitz, a character who sells Tijuana Bibles in his attempt to impress the boy wonder Jerry Dinkelman in a novel by this Canadian author.
The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz is by, I don't know, Johnson.
Mordecai Richler. 20.
Does it say who centers from on the United Kingdom?
It doesn't.
Yeah. So that's all those clues were before the
English,
actually
So does it say take UK in the?
No.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think we'll win that one.
Because that should be an A. The United Kingdom wasn't a country.
Oh, it's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
Wait, can we get a score check, please?
Yep, I have a score of 180, 100, and there's a protest noted.
Yeah.
Cool.
So guys, we'll just keep it up. Keep converting toss-ups, all right?
Say 20 on this, right?
I like knew that those were like really old morality based and shit, but I didn't know.
Should I go Honduras? Sorry, guys.
No, that was.
I wasn't really practiced as I was kind of confused.
Well, I knew that. I was like, I read that somewhere on the board. So it's like an
Or were those ballets?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all ballets. All ballets. I see. I didn't recognize them.
Yeah. So but I didn't know if they would be used.
I mean, maybe that was true. That's
I should like sit on my phone.
It's still a little bit confused.
Let's keep it up. Let's go, guys.
Alright. Here will be toss-up 11. This group's anthem was a song called Muri or Walls. A radical fighting branch of this group had a logo that merged an eagle with an anchor-like symbol, while its own logo featured a distinctive red font with a flag emerging from the letter N in this group's name. For his support of this group, a priest was murdered by being thrown into a water reservoir by 3 security police officers. It emerged out of protest after the firing of a female crane operator.
Solidarity?
Yes. And your bonus. In some variants, this person is a villain responsible for the ongoing dilemma, for 10 points each. What nameless individual was added by Judith Jarvis Thompson to an existing philosophical problem? In that problem, you can choose to push this individual onto a bridge in order to stop a trolley from killing 5 others.
It's that guy.
Yeah, fat guy, I guess.
Answer?
Fat guy?
Yes. A 2009 survey by David Bourget and this man showed that 86% of philosophers would sacrifice one individual to save multiple lives in the trolley problem. This Australian proposed naturalistic dualism in his book The Conscious Mind.
Singer? Is a singer? Singer is Australian, I think so. Singer?
Answer. David Chalmers. Judith Jarvis Thompson is also known for writing a paper in defense of this practice, arguing that a pregnant woman should be able to control her own body.
Abortion.
Yes, for 20. Toss-up 12. In a battle, this figure defeats a nefarious, 4-eyed, 6-armed, ox-headed, fog-breathing enemy.
Hercules.
Say it again?
Heracles.
No. This figure used the drought demon Nuba and invented the south-pointing chariot in order to defeat the aforementioned Chi-Yo. This husband of the inventor of sericulture is credited with many inventions of his own, including the calendar. He goaded the 4-eyed Zhang into inventing his people's writing. This victor at the Battle of Zhuolu also subdued the Yan Emperor to become possibly the last of the 3 sovereigns. For 10 points, name this mythical founder of Chinese civilization, named for the same color as one of China's key rivers.
Yellow Emperor?
Yes. Bonus. In a reductive amination, this functional group is formed in the first step. Name this functional group that consists of a carbon-nitrogen double bond and which is the product of condensation between primary amines and ketones or aldehydes.
Azide. Oh, it is? Yeah, carbon, I think it's azide.
Azide?
Imine. In the second step of reductive amination, imines are reduced using this weak reducing agent in water. It is generally unable to reduce carbonyl compounds due to the electron withdrawing group present in its structure.
Which minus? Which minus? Which minus?
Sodium cyanoborohydride. Reductive amination is usually fastest when this value is between 5 and 8. This value for a solution can be approximated by the addition of universal indicator.
pH.
Yes, 10. Toss-up 13. A non-perturbative approach to solving particle interactions described by this theory is to use a grid and introduce a momentum cutoff at 1 over the length of the grid spacing. David Pulitzer, Frank Wilczek, and David Gross were awarded the 2004 Nobel Prize for a prediction of an important property of this theory. The Lagrangian for this theory uses functions on the fundamental representation of the SU3 symmetry group.
So like quantum chromodynamics.
Yes.
Nice. Good man.
Bonus. Answer the following about the satirical poem Macflecknoe for 10 points each. The poem mocks this man who is referred to as the true blue Protestant poet in the full title and as the last great prophet of tautology in the satire.
Shadwell.
This author of Macflecknoe reworked the story of Antony and Cleopatra in the play All for Love.
Dryden.
Part of the reason Dryden and Shadwell disagreed was because Shadwell fancied himself an heir to this other English author, whose comedic plays included Volpone and The Alchemist.
Johnson. Yes.
For 30.
Sick.
Keep it up. Good more toss-ups.
Next is toss-up 14. In a ceiling painting, this man carries a massive golden tiller and gazes at his reflection in Minerva's shield. Depictions of his face are often accompanied by the motto, Nec pluribus impar. This man rejected a design for a palace facade from Gian Lorenzo Bernini in favor of a colonnade by Claude Perrault. This royal, who brought the Gobelin tapestry factory into prominence...
Louis XIV?
Yes.
Yes. Good buzz.
Under the name Mrigadava, this city was the location of the Deer Park important to the history of a certain religion. For 10 points each, in the city where the Ashoka pillar was erected, it was originally topped by the lion capital of Ashoka, a sculpture still on display at a museum here.
Okay, so
city in India.
city in northern India. What?
Answer,
Agra?
Sarnath, or Isipatana.
Okay.
Ashoka was a Mauryan king who famously converted to this religion following the bloody Kalinga War.
Buddhism.
Ashoka declared his adherence to Buddhism through his 33 namesake edicts, which are mostly divided into the Pillar Edicts and this other group of 14 edicts whose name refers to their general location.
Rock edicts.
For 20.
Nice. Good. Keep it up.
What house number was that?
That was 14.
Okay, 16. We have to get 2.
15. Shortly after the fall of this city, survivors named Harbis and Thomas, the son-in-law of the emperor, were slain in a duel. This city's neighborhood of Bab Tuma was developed by the Eastern Orthodox adherents. A woman named Zainab gave a sermon here against her enemies after she and her family members were taken to this city after the Battle of Karbala. A mosque in the city was formerly a church that supposedly contained John the Baptist's head and was also where Yazid kept the head of Hussein on display. The Abbasids eventually conquered this city in 750, and it was soon eclipsed in importance by a city in modern-day Iraq.
Damascus?
Yes.
Yes. Good job, Luke.
Bonus. In the first Argentine dance by Alberto Ginastera, the left hand has its own key signature of 5 flats and plays almost entirely in this manner, except when imitating an open guitar chord. For 10 points each. Describe this manner of playing the piano that generates a G-flat major pentatonic scale. Chopin's Etude, Opus 10 No. 5, is nicknamed for it, since the right hand plays fast triplets almost entirely in this manner, except for one F in the chord before the...
Only entirely on the black keys.
Yes. The right pinky plays a static melody over rapid, flowing A-flat major arpeggios to open Chopin's Etude, Opus 25 No. 1. Robert Schumann nicknamed that piece after another instrument, the Aeolian harp, which is played in this manner.
What? Plucking.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Pizzicato?
like plucking.
Answer,
Plucking.
by the wind.
Yeah.
Beethoven's String Quartet No. 10 is nicknamed harp in part because of the many quick arpeggios and passages played using this technique, an Italian term that instructs the strings to be plucked.
Pizzicato.
Pizzicato.
Yes, that's 20.
Can we have a score check?
Yep.
Alright guys, we need to get all that the last toss. I know.
Okay. So right now the score is 275, 150, and there's a protest noted.
There's 2 more times. Confidence.
So we're up 125.
We're doing well.
Yeah, we have a protest.
And we have a protest which I'm almost sure will win. Like, I'm like 75% sure we'll win the protest.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't on the answer line,
It wasn't in the answer line, and it's also just, it's actually, okay, it's not widely enforced, but it's technically wrong. The United Kingdom does not
I
technically.
mean, I've seen different tournaments, like, take different stances on that. Some people just take it, some people actually neg you, so.
Yeah. So we'll see
Yeah.
what they decide. Really,
I
we
mean,
just need to play.
it's kind of dumb,
Yeah,
since
yeah.
there's no,
But it's like
England's
saying in the
system.
Soviet Union,
so-
there's a question in the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
there's a question.
Don't worry about that. Well, let's get it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, sure.
Don't worry about it. Let's just get toss-ups.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I had a score of 275, 150. Is that
I agree.
Okay. All right, toss up 16. Itinerant dancers wearing conical peacock feather hats personify this figure in Maharashtra, where he is sometimes called Sri Vital.
Krishna.
Yes.
Nice.
That's
I'm not gonna have it.
Bonus. The psychologist Susan Clancy wrote a 2005 book explaining why people believe these events to be true and argued against the accuracy of so-called repressed memories. For 10 points each, named these events the subject of accounts by Betty and Barney Hill, who claimed that one of these events happened to them in New Hampshire.
Maybe the ghost. Oh, this is like ghost appeared.
Answer.
Like ghost appeared. Like
Alien abduction. The reliability of repressed memories has been attacked by psychologists such as Elizabeth Loftus, who has performed studies showing how people frequently claim to remember a fake memory about becoming lost in one of these places as a child.
Like a mall, right?
That makes sense. Shopping mall?
Yes. Repressed memories may occasionally be linked to this mental disorder, which can develop after people are exposed to intense, painful events. Survivors of rape and war may develop this disorder.
PTSD? Yeah. PTSD?
Yes, that's 20.
Keep those guys.
17. A recent book about this man's Black Jesus notes the brief but powerful influence of Adam Clayton Powell Sr.'s Abyssinian Baptist Church on him. This man's best-known book heavily analyzes the Sermon on the Mount and argues that the gospel must be sought again and again. Even though he co-drafted the Bethel Confession, he ultimately refused to sign it, and also disliked the so-called positivism of revelation of his friend Karl Barth. This man distinguished between cheap and costly grace.
Bonhoeffer?
Yes.
That is essential.
Fraunhofer.
These objects often form the basis for the vector space acted upon by a linear transformation. For 10 points each, identify these special vectors whose direction does not change when the linear transformation is applied. When the transformation is represented by a matrix, multiplying these vectors by the matrix gives the same result as multiplying them by some special constant.
Eigenvectors? Yep. Eigenvectors?
The spectral theorems give conditions under which a matrix has this property. A matrix has this property when it can be written as P times D times P inverse, where P is an invertible square matrix and D is the namesake type of matrix. The eigenvectors of the original matrix form the columns of P.
Transpose? Is that what this is? Maybe transpose.
Answer.
Transpose?
Diagonalizable. If the linear transformation D represents differentiation with respect to x, then this function f is an eigenvector because df is equal to f. This function also has an eigenvalue of 1 since its derivative is equal to f of x itself.
E to the x. Yeah. No, the derivative of e to the x isn't equal 1. It's a function also.
Answer.
Like integration, right?
This is each of the x.
Oh yeah, I can't. Why do I not listen? Is that done?
Yes.
Speak over me for being stupid.
Toss-up 18. Trapped molecules are ubiquitinated by a namesake quality control complex bound to these structures. Toe printing and a namesake profiling assay often arrest these organelles with cyclohexamide. Macrolides and aminoglycosides inhibit these organelles, which have an exit tunnel in which nascent chain compaction occurs. EIFs are responsible for recruiting the parts of this organelle to the Kozak consensus sequence.
Ribosomes?
Yes. Bonus. This was probably the first battle in which English archers fought each other on English soil. For 10 points each, name this 1403 battle in which a rebel known as Hotspur was slain, ending the challenge of the Percys to the ruling house of Lancaster.
Shrewsbury, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Shrewsbury?
Yes. The King of England at the time was the fourth such ruler with this name. His son of this name and future successor fought in the battle and, as king, would fight at the Battle of Agincourt.
Henry?
The Percys allied with Owen Glendower, who claimed to hold this title. Llewellyn ap Griffith previously held this title, as did Edward of Woodstock.
Prince of Wales. No, King of Wales.
I think Llewellyn was King of Wales. Yeah.
Answer?
King of Wales.
No, Prince of Wales.
Oh, really?
20.
My bad, wrong Llewellyn.
Sorry, can we get a score check?
Yep. I have 275, 230.
Yeah, that's why I have to.
English person.
Toss up 19. One mechanism of this process was supported by Alexander Dutoit, though it garnered little support elsewhere. Seaton et al. Questioned a rapid Cretaceous increase in this process in a 2008 paper. This process was first proposed by Harry Hess, and is evidenced by magnetic stripes proposed by the Vine-Matthews-Morley hypothesis.
See if we're splitting.
Yes.
Yes. That was good.
Bonus. The wave functions for this system can be determined by solving a radial equation. For 10 points each, name this common model system in quantum mechanics, consisting of one proton and one electron. The energies of this system are equal to the ground state energy divided by the square of the principal quantum number. The wave functions for the hydrogen atom contain these polynomials. They solve the differential equation x times y double prime plus the quantity 1 minus x times y prime plus n times y equals 0.
Hold on.
Answer? Laguerre polynomials. The hydrogen atom wave functions are also dependent on this quantity, symbolized lowercase a, the mean distance from the center of the nucleus to the electron in the ground state. It can be expressed in terms of the mass of the electron, the speed of light, Planck's constant, and the fine structure constant.
Wait, fine structure constant. Like the
Answer?
It's like the Bohr radius.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's 20 points. Final toss-up. An author from this movement contrasted phrases like white napkin and daylight or the world and a purse in a text that praises the novels of Matthew Lewis. An author from this movement praised his wife in a letter to Yoki and was thought to have written the last poem, which never actually existed. Robert Desnos was an important figure in this movement, exemplified by a novel that ends with the line, "Beauty will be convulsive or will not be at all," about Andre's obsession with the title woman. That novel, Nadja, was written by a man who advocated automatic writing. For 10 points, name this movement that had a manifesto written by Andre Breton.
Surrealism?
Yes.
Came out with it.
And final bonus. The fifth and final of these conflicts ended in 1828 for 10 points each. Name these conflicts, the fourth of which ended with the Treaty of Gulistan and which occasionally involved Turkey as well. During these conflicts, one side obtained control of such regions as Derbent and Dagestan.
Dagestan, Russian-Turkish wars. No.
I think so.
Russo, or is that it?
Answer?
Russo-Turkish wars.
No, Russo-Persian Wars. The Second Russo-Persian War was known as the Persian campaign of this Russian ruler. Known as the Great, he took the Grand Embassy throughout Europe, where he learned about how to modernize his country.
Peter the Great.
Yes. Peter wanted his courtiers to wear modern clothing and remove these objects, which he achieved by imposing taxes specifically directed against these things. Yes, that's 20 on the bonus. Final score, 305, 260.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I could have gotten those. I could have actually gotten those.
0.